All right, well, go ahead and call a meeting to order. It is now 6:32. And thanks for coming out, everyone. We good to see everybody again. And I will ask Mr. Kamick if he would be willing to do roll call for us
Abdul Muhammad,
here.
Shayla Lynch, Talithia Rout,
Here.
Craig Kamick here, Glenda George, Kim Thompson,
Here.
Brett Nathaniel,
Present.
Dominique Aubert,
Here.
and Lois Gillespie.
Here.
All right, thank you. And right now, we'll have a quick moment of silence as well. Thank you for that. It's that time of the year where you're always, things coming out of Thanksgiving. I love Thanksgiving. I have an opportunity to really reflect, not that you shouldn't do that almost daily, honestly, but, giving more special focus around the things that we're grateful for and so forth. So really appreciate you all taking the time to come out and trying to make a difference. So we'll go ahead and read the mission statement. We'll start at the top. Let's see here. Mr. Kamick, would you like to lead the way there?
Mission statement or the,
I'm sorry. Read the, we need to read the mission statement.
The mission of the Equity Council is to monitor and analyze equity issues, advise the Fayette County Board of Education, and advocate for achievement for all students.
Great, thank you. And then approval of the minutes for October,
Right, since we missed
since
our
we
November.
did not meet in November, yes, due to voting. Had to do our civic duty in November.
I'd like to offer that there is on page 2, where it says Dominique Aubert stated that she applied for the position because of the advertisement she saw in the paper, that actually should read Lois Gillespie. And then toward the bottom, it says Lois Gillespie asked if it could be shared with Global Lex, and I believe that was Dominique. Just switch those
So
around.
got swapped around there.
Yeah, and then Gillespie's misspelled as well.
My ghost writer. There is one, believe me. That's what the approval process is for.
And did you say Gillespie was misspelled
Yes,
Uh,
it's E-S-P-I-E.
down where?
That one
Page
gets
2,
Yeah, it'll get
Oh, okay.
corrected on
Okay,
thank
every
you,
word it's mentioned.
thank you.
there you go. All right.
Okay.
All
Make a
right.
motion to approve the minutes with noted changes.
With noted changes, there's a motion to approve the minutes with noted changes, and it's been properly second. Any other discussion, questions? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Motion passes. Thank you. Okay. Now we will move to reading of the standards of practice. And Brett, would you start at the top there as elected?
As elected and appointed members of the Fayette County Board of Education Equity Council Committee, we accept the high honor and trust that has been placed in us to ensure that the students in this district receive the best education possible or available anywhere in the United States of America. In accepting this role, we hold the pursuit of that goal as our sacred duty. To that end, we hereby commit to the following in the conduct of our business. We will
Go ahead. Yeah. Well, we can roll this way. It's fine. I'll just, yeah. Place the interests of students above all in every decision that we make.
Uphold all applicable federal and state laws and regulations.
Abide by the policies of the Fayette County Board of Education, the Equity Council bylaws, and work with fellow committee members to recommend changes to those policies as needed to improve student learning.
Maintain an unwavering focus on the achievement of all students regardless of race, class, ethnicity, sexual orientation, gender, gender identity, socioeconomic status, special need, or English language proficiency.
Not use our positions for personal or partisan gain.
Model continuous learning and improvement in our roles as members of the advisory team.
support a strategic plan for the district that clearly defines success and accountability for the board, the staff, and our students.
Focus on the policy work of the board and monitor progress on the indicators of success in our strategic plan, leaving the day-to-day operation of the district to the superintendent and staff.
Base our recommendations upon available facts, advise our convictions, avoid bias, and uphold and support the decisions of the board once a decision is rendered by them.
Work to build trust between and among Equity Council committee members, board members, and the superintendent by treating everyone with dignity and respect, even in times of disagreement.
Maintain the confidentiality of potentially privileged information shared in collaboration with subcommittee members and district staff.
Recognize that the authority rests only with the decisions made by the Fayette County Board of Education and make no independent commitments or take any independent actions that may compromise the FCPS Board of Education, Equity Council Committee, nor the work of district staff as a team.
Refer constituent complaints and concerns to the Equity Council Chair through the Equity Council Liaison, the Superintendent Designee, and then to the Superintendent.
Respect the leadership roles of the board chair, Equity Council committee chair, and superintendent.
Hello.
Hello, hello. All right, thank you for the reading of that. You know, I was just listening to everybody talking about this, and I'll transition to Equity Council Chair report. And one of the things I did, we didn't meet last month, but I attended a lot of different meetings and had an opportunity to engage the community in different ways, different aspects around equity and education and things that's going on in the community and so forth. And it was interesting to hear some of the feedback from and realizing how diverse our thoughts are around what equity really is, what it means to, not what it is, but what it means to each one of us. Also, diversity in why certain things are the way they are. I had an opportunity to be at a function as the chair of this council for Leadership Lexington, and in that meeting, we were talking about shadowing principals. And one of the young men mentioned that he shadowed a principal at a particular school, and that there was a need for parent participation, more parent participation, right? And so, ironically, 12 years ago, I was in Leadership Lexington, and ironically, I had shadowed the same school. And nobody knew that. I was just kind of listening in. But I shadowed two schools, and that had been one of the schools. And 12 years ago, a principal at that same school, which was a different principal, when I asked the same question, what was needed, and it was parent participation. So for me, it was a wow moment because I'm like, wow, 12 years later, the same answer, two different principals, same school, right? So my flags went flying real high in my mind. And then the other school that I shadowed was on a different part of town. I'm trying not to obviously name schools here, but different part of Lexington. And on the other side of town, the main problem from that principal was I get a lot of requests on why my children aren't in gifted and talented classes, right? So that was the other school, same school district, 12 years ago, just happened to be different sides of the city. So I subsequently started asking some questions to people just to kind of get feedback on why the dean parents aren't engaged. And it's just a whole host of reasons, right? Some of it, and this is from feedback, right? So I'm not giving you my thoughts right this minute. I'm just giving you feedback. Some of it is, well, the parents are too busy. Some of it is the parents don't care. Some of it is the parents don't trust the school district because they're not supportive. So it's a host of different reasons why that feeling is there. Yet at the end of the day, 12 years later, the same thing is being said. So it was a real big reminder for me how important it is that when we're doing things that we have to really be intentful on how we engage and really listening to one another. Because it's a stake of folks on this side here is like, parents not engaged, it's their fault, over here is school's fault, and somewhere in the middle lies a solution, I believe, that it's going to take all of us. It's going to take all of us. It's going to take the school district being a little bit more thoughtful and engaged. It's going to take the parents stretching a little bit to be a little bit more engaged. It's going to maybe take us getting outside the box a little bit, right? From what we're used to doing over and over and over, just because it's always been done that way, that we have to be able to be more thoughtful on how do we give more options so that we can have better engagement. Because we can't let another 12 years go by and have that statement be said again for that same school. That's to me, it's not acceptable. So, you know, I just want us to, as I was reading this, focus on the policy work of the board and monitor progress on the indicators of success in our strategic plan, leaving the day-to-day operations of the district to the superintendent and staff. So often we can feel like, as parents, I'm speaking as a parent now, that a married parent, that we have the answers, right? And we know exactly what needs to happen. Two kids come through the Fayette County School District, two wonderful young adults now, and the school district did a great job for them. But I realize even more so now how important it is that we have to have a listening ear. Because it's not always what it may look like, right? It's not always what it may look like. So just want to kind of lay that there just so it can kind of frame our thought around what we'll discuss today. If anybody has other things that they want to bring forth and discuss, it's been quite a bit happening even though we didn't meet last month. And with that being said, we will turn to any other reflections and updates. We'll just go, reflections and updates. Anybody else, any questions or anything before we move to our board chair?
Do you want to, just point of clarification, you skipped F up in the first section?
Yeah, the
Oh,
motion to-
yeah, there you go.
I figure that's kind of important. so-
Definitely is.
Motion to move that down the agenda. past
Okay.
the,
Can we take a motion? I'm sorry, it was on my mind. I hit fast forward, man. I was like the microwave, hit play and hit done.
Make a motion to move letter F to, I guess it'd be the new letter
Just-
J, but under J.
Or you can move it to whatever your motion is, you go for it.
I have a question. Some time ago, the consultants came, S&A Strategies came. Did we ever get any feedback from them?
Actually,
And how do we access that feedback?
So,
Before we move on,
before,
Yeah.
yeah,
on the
yeah,
floor.
because it's a motion on
Oh,
the
I'm
floor.
sorry.
That's
I'm
all
sorry.
right, that's
I'm
all right.
sorry.
But I'll answer that
been
later.
seconded.
But we need a
Second. I second. I'm sorry, I thought
That's
somebody
all
had
right.
already seconded.
I'll second your motion.
Okay, so there's a motion on the floor to move F to after J. And it's been properly second. Any questions, concerns? Okay, seeing none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Thank you. My mistake on that. Going back to your question, yes, so, Daryl and I have received some feedback actually this week in paper form and email form, I guess, and then they wanted to get some feedback from us on some of their recommendations, and so they hadn't said when they were planning on coming back out to do a formal presentation back to us. But I just had a conversation with Sarah yesterday regarding just that. And their feedback. They didn't really go into, I'll let them give the report. They just gathered feedback just in general from whomever they spoke to. They obviously left, it's just anonymous feedback.
So perhaps in the January meeting?
That's what I'm thinking is, yes, because they were anticipating new members
okay.
coming on board. That's
And
correct.
then I have one more question.
So I'll speak to that as well, given both of us. So I did receive it. I've read it. The plan was when we close out this year and prepare for the new body going into next year, to have them come back on the agenda, since it will be a new year, set things in motion for the year, provide points of clarity to some of the areas within that recommendation, because based on my reading, it's obvious there's some misunderstanding of the roles of this body. And so clear that up with the group, set everything in motion, and start operating under that understanding.
Very good. My second question is about Ms. Thompson and Ms. Vaught, who presented data from HDI. If there is any follow-up on that from this committee, or how do we go forward?
That probably should come under subcommittee reports and presentations under J.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. I'm sure it's feedback there. Yeah, but we'll.
Know how we move forward on that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome. All right. Well, so let's go ahead and go to our board chair, Ms. Spires.
Yeah, so the first thing, and actually your question leads well, and I'll leave it to you for your subcommittee report. But there was a little confusion at our board meeting when this committee came to present, and part of it's because you weren't there and we were just all confused. And so if you all are planning on presenting, let me know in advance of the meeting. And then I can determine where it should go on the agenda, and/or because I set the agenda, I can make it an agenda item. If it's just your own free will, then I'll put it down the end. But we had some confusion, and so instead of, really, I think your report should have been as part of the equity report, because we actually had the way it all worked. But we all got through it. But just going forward, if you all can let me know when you're coming, we can kind of iron that out. And there was a lot of confusion because, ironically, no one signed up in the correct spot to speak at the correct time at the last board meeting. So I was trying to navigate all comments. So I wanted to just touch on a couple of things. As you all know, one of the things I'm really passionate about are trauma-informed schools. And I have a new foster placement that is in one of our first 100% trauma-informed schools in Fayette County. And I just want to say, it's amazing. Like to see even how the cafeteria workers are integrating with this child, and to see from the moment he gets out of the vehicle, the person who greets him and walks him in. And it's interesting because he came from another Fayette County school that has not been trauma informed. And if you look at his behavioral reports, if you look at, the data shows, like at his old school, his class had to be exited several times. He's never had to exit a class in the school. And so I really just want to continue to advocate. Now I'm like even more, we're going to be 100% trauma-informed district. So you're going to hear me talk about that all the time until we're 100% trauma-informed. But that kind of leads me to another issue I just want to briefly talk on. Because it's been in the media over the past few weeks, and that's kind of the issue, that the BUILD organization has brought forth to the school district, and that they came and presented or spoke at our last board meeting as well. And I just kind of want to give you guys some updates on where we are. As it was reported at the school board meeting, we are seeing a reduction in suspensions. Are we where we want to be? Absolutely not. Are we using a comprehensive set of tools in our toolbox? Yes, we are using positive behavioral integration system. Interventions, PBIS. I just keep using that acronym. So we're using PBIS. We're using the trauma-informed approach. We're using restorative practices. We're using restorative justice. We have staff that are being trained on the Safer, Saner School model, and they are doing the training at the direction of the Safer, Saner School model. Like, they're telling us how to do the training, and I understand that may be conflicting with how BUILD wants us to do the training, but since Safer, Saner Schools is doing the training, we're following them. But I really want to reach out too, because it's not just as simple as suspensions, and I think that's something we all need to kind of be cognizant of. We need to make sure that when suspensions are used, it's a rare thing, and that it's for suspendable offenses. We want to make sure that kids are, it's the term we all kind of use, butts in seats. We want to make sure these kids are in the classroom, because if they're not in the classroom, they're not learning. And so we want to make sure that that we're getting our students in the classroom. And we, as a board, are committed to this. But we also recognize there was an article in the Courier-Journal today that some of you all may have seen, that even though suspensions are down and interventions have increased in Jefferson County, that student behavior has not changed, and that they're still having significant issues. Because the one difference between us and Jefferson County is we're really tackling the mental health. We're tackling that trauma-informed piece. We're getting nurses in the schools. We have our own police department, and that's one thing we can control those individuals, which they don't have that ability to do. So our staff is trained on the same things, the trauma and the education. And, if you see our officers, they're more likely reading in the classroom and engaged and involved than you do in districts that do not have control over their police departments. And so I want to just kind of share this, because I know there's been a lot of information out and a lot of miscommunication. It seems to be, and also what everybody wants to talk to me about. I was at the pediatrician this morning, and the nurse was like, "I saw you on the news." And so I really just want to share with you all that as a board, we are committed, and we are committed to making sure that our staff is trauma and trained. We're committed to keeping our students in the seats. We are committed to giving our staff the training that they need, and that training is on implicit bias, diversity training in the trauma, and to continue to open up they're just to continue giving our staff tools in their toolboxes so that they can reach our children, because we know that we have over 150 languages in our schools. We have 54% of our students living in poverty. We have a majority district. We have a lot of things going on here in Fayette County. And we have a lot of good things going on in Fayette County. And like I said, but we're not there yet, but we're going to get there. And I will continue preaching about getting involved. And the other thing is, if anyone asks me what they can do, I continue spreading the message that we need you to give 10. We need you to read in our classrooms. We need you to be involved. Because if I could have everyone that has contacted me in the last couple weeks, actually jump in the classroom. That's what would help us reduce suspensions, and that's what would help us. And on that note, real quick, Superintendent Cox sends his apologies, but he's actually giving 10 tonight and volunteering at one of the basketball games. So as part of his volunteering. So he wanted to pass along that he was sorry he could not be at tonight's meeting, but he's doing his volunteer work.
All right.
I have a question. It seems, and this, I'm an outsider looking in, like, is there a failure for you all and the Build folks to be able to schedule a time to sit down face to face and meet? Has
I
that
have met with
happened?
them many times. I have
Okay.
invited them
So
to this
I've-
meeting
I've met with them as
many
well.
times. They don't come to any of these things. They will not come. They want to meet with the superintendent. They have said some really horrible things about the superintendent and myself, and made some statements. I have left it, as an employer, I would never put my employee in a situation where he felt he had to meet with them. So I have given him that choice. And I stand by the choice. And I mean, if he doesn't want to meet with them, I support that. I don't think he is necessarily trying. I think his frustration is everything they've asked we're doing, but they won't come to the meetings. Like I met with them before we even started this year and said, your data is wrong. Come look at our classrooms. I went with them to Jefferson County. I observed a class. I observed 3 classrooms. In all 3 classrooms, more students were off task than on task. I watched the Jefferson County district person who's supposed to be training everybody on trauma incorrectly administer it the entire time. I never saw her use the proper language once. And so for me, like, I feel like I just keep going and I keep participating. I've been to all their meetings with the exception of the one that they scheduled on the same night that our president came to visit, and I live downtown and traffic was not an option for me to get there. But I've gone to everything, and I am the superintendent's, like, I'm above him. But I mean, the things that have been said about us are really not appropriate things. So I agree, but I don't know if that helps.
I just wondered, because that's what it appeared to, from outside looking in, like, would they just sit down and meet? Because
Right.
I didn't know if y'all had or not.
No, we met I met with them in April. I met with them in May. And here's part of it too, just if we're going to be honest, in May at the Nehemiah Action, I said that I agreed to meet with them in the next 30 days to schedule the meeting to Jefferson County in September. They came to the board meeting a couple weeks later. I brought up that I had not heard from anyone. I continued not to hear anybody. The Herald Leader did a follow-up article to see if had heard from anyone, and that night I heard from someone to schedule a meeting. In September, I had still not heard anything about when we were meeting, so I actually reported to my pastor that I guess we weren't going to Jefferson County. The next day, a meeting popped up that we were suddenly going in October. So it's been very frustrating to me because I feel like it's been a lot of media, and it's been a very awkward situation for me because I think you know me personally, like that I am a sit down and meet. Another thing that I found really interesting, and I'll just share this to be honest, after the meeting last week, a lady came up to me and she started asking me questions, and I talked to her, but we were going to closed session, and I said, I'd really like to continue this conversation. I said, I would love to meet you for coffee. Let's talk this out. And she told me that she could not meet me for coffee because it violated Bill's policies. And I said, well, we can meet mother to grandmother if that makes you feel better. So they have really strict kind of things. When you meet with them, only one person is often allowed to talk. And they all, so like one meeting I went to, like I sat at the end, it had this many people in it, and one person was allowed to talk to me, and nobody else was allowed. It's a really uncomfortable situation, and I don't feel like, that's my, all year that's kind of been my thing is, can we have a conversation? Can we have a dialogue? We're talking about an issue that we need to have courageous conversations. Anytime you bring up race and, and suspensions, and these are conversations that need to be had, and they just keep telling us that they want us to do these things, the Safer Standard Schools model, they started at kind of a zero suspension, but they've backed off of that, I think, because the data is starting to come out that you can't quite really go to zero suspension, because data is showing that students aren't feeling safe from that. We also know from Broward County, as they did in Florida, as they did an assessment of what happened and what led up to the Parkland shootings, one of the things that they found was they had really gone to kind of this zero suspension, and that was played a role in some of the things. So it's kind of, I mean, yeah, that's the tough part, is that I have met with them, many of them, but they don't want to meet with me. They want to meet with him. And,
And I'll just add a simple statement on that. We show up every day doing this work, and knowing that we've got that number of people committed to the work, and then they read the newspaper to create this narrative. It's disheartening, but it does not shape our commitment to continue supporting our 42,000 students. I mean, and families. There's a ton of work being done. Won't sit here and say that we don't have room for improvement, but given my 28 years or 29 years in this space, I promise you, under my 52 years, almost 53, it's much better than it was when I was a kid and as a student. And it has been much better as an employee, because I've been in this district 10 years and in and out of other school districts 29. So believe me, there's a strategic approach to what we're doing. There's a progress monitoring for continuous improvement that takes place every single week under the structure of the superintendent. Believe me, work is being done. So if the scorecard is measured based on the newspaper, I would advise you not to use it as your basis for validating the work.
All right. Any other questions?
I actually have a question about the trauma-informed training. Is it a one-time thing? Is it repeated throughout the year? Like, what format does it take?
so like the one school that 100% did it, they as a school took a day and did it like together. They back in the summer, like the whole school, every employee did it.
And so we're working our way across the district. I mean, big elephant. But one of the most integrated approach that we've done is take a look at every single mental health professional. All of the ones we hired got mental health trauma-informed care, and every one of them that's in the district will get that training. So that means there's staff in every single building that will have the full comprehensive. It will be it is a part of the required onboarding process every time we hire a mental health social worker, psychologist, et cetera. So as we completely roll out and phase in the 100%, we focus intentionally on those staff who are dealing with the students direct, and to give us that capacity in each school.
It's done in partnership with the University of Kentucky CATI, so the Center on Trauma and blah, 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 blah. No one knows what that acronym stands for.
And there's also just for the record, a service delivery approach that's based on tiered priority needs, need-based data that says where do you see the highest level of intensity or need. So we do deploy and then ramp up our training in those focus areas instead of just saying, okay, let's just cover the district. Let's look at the data. And I was sharing with Ms. Gillespie earlier that we have a data rhythm that tells us that every week, where do we see our priority needs, and where do we then deploy our services. So it's very systematic.
And it's an elective training too, in the sense that we offer it for groups, but not the people that are already have, like, it's going to hit to everybody, but for those of you who want to get ahead of the game, we've had it offered several times as like a one, and it's not an online, like it's an interactive training with CATI leading the training.
Follow-up question to that. One is, what school is 100%
There's a
trauma-informed?
couple now.
Yeah.
I know Ashland is. That's because that's the school I'm referencing. But we announced this at like 2 meetings ago. I think it was one middle school, one elementary school. But I just remembered Ashland because
What are the parameters that, like, what is the data that you're looking at that informs you about which school might benefit from it?
So we have this, we'll call it the equity collaboration between the Equity Office, Student Support Services, and within the Student Support Services offices, mental health, DPP, PBIs, MTSS, counselors, psychologists, social workers, Friskies, Family Youth Service Centers. And so they collect data every day, every week on a rhythm that determines where it might be incidences. So schools have to report any incidents that basically fall under the administrative guidelines for levels. It could be a fight, it could be any other
Type of behavior.
Right, and so they enter those into our system. We progress monitor that data. Segregate them by incident, what type, how often, all the things. And so that office, that student support office is looking at that data so that we can do just-in-time responses so that it does not go in the trend the wrong direction. So.
Gotcha. And is there a cost to a school if they want all their staff to undergo the training?
From the capacity standpoint, there could be, but from the service delivery approach to the way we're using it, I don't think there is a cost under the current structural model.
So if there's a school that just wanted to get ahead of the game and volunteer a training day or
Find
something.
a PD.
they would be accommodated?
We would probably work with them from the district to mitigate some of that cost that wouldn't be incurred on the school.
Just to be clear, it's not just the social workers, it's also the Friskies and other personnel that are.
It's like cafeteria
Absolutely.
workers and the
Absolutely,
custodians
everybody.
and the secretary. I mean, the big one is the office staff, because the office staff are
Yeah.
who interact with these children frequently.
And believe it or not, even bus drivers.
Right.
We've talked about an approach to get all of our drivers, because they're the first line of entry for supporting kids. And if they don't know some of the triggers, because they're simply just trying to maintain order on a bus, some of those triggers are just doing their job. And if they know that, then they can use different strategies and approaches. So we've even looked at that huge leg on the elephant to see if we can make sure we do this with some intention.
Who would they contact? Would a principal reach out to you?
They would reach out to the Student Support Services Office. Doug Adams is the director. Shamika name, and Dee Dee Massey, Mackenzie Leachman. So Doug Adams would be the direct point of contact if you want to send an email. But
I think, I mean, they know it's there, and
Oh,
they
yeah.
know, and they're like, of all, and I know, like, it kind of sounds like maybe they're brown nosing me since everybody knows this is my cause, but I get more emails from staff saying thank you for paying for this training, and thank you for this partnership, and thank you. I learned more about how I interact. I've learned than I get from any of our trainings that we offer.
What about the implicit bias training? Is that something that's,
It's continuing to grow, but you
yeah,
can talk
so
about that.
again, that's another elephant. She mentioned Broward County. I went to the Council of Great City Schools Conference, which we're not a member of, but met some consultants there that's doing work in Broward as a result of some of the incidents they faced. And so what we were looking for was capacity, how we get this, again, in multiple places at one time with the biggest and earliest, quickest return on our investment. So I'm looking now with doing some contract work that will give us some modules and some other quick wins while we then create some more intensive face-to-face trainings. We do a process in the district, again, using data that gives us some. So when you think about suspensions and you think about incidences, you think about all of that, at the core of it could be simple bias. It could be cultural, it could be lack of some level of competence. So we dig into say, okay, let's look at where this is happening and unpack and see if it's been happening because of. So that's ongoing. And then we bring in trainings. So we've got schools identified now that's getting trainings specific to because the data says here's where we're going to need to be. So instead of coming in with the Band-Aid approach on one item, we may do, and we will do, we'll triage that school. We'll say, let's provide implicit bias, let's provide cultural responsive teaching and learning, let's provide PBIS and MTSS all at the same time. It's not optional, it's not negotiable, because we're going to cover all of it. So if your doctor tells you you got a cold and you say, well, I just need to take some Robitussin. Well, they say, no, we're going to give you Robitussin and, just so we make sure what you have is covered. So we're not going to miss the opportunity. But we're doing it as we work. It's, again, big district, and we're using data to drive where those priority areas are.
I'd just say I went through my first implicit bias training about a month ago and found that for myself, I have biases, not that I didn't think I did, but it just really highlighted how simple you can be biased. So as an African-American male that's 52 years old, I would sit here and tell you that, yes, I do have biases. And I left that training saying that I think that anybody dealing with children, anybody dealing with the public, anybody in that capacity needs to take that training. And if you haven't personally taken it, I would highly encourage you to take it for yourself. Because that was a aha moment for me personally. I walked away thinking, it's really easy, very, very easy to just kind of think, oh yeah, it's just like this. So, yeah.
So we introduced the required training last year to every employee through our platform, and then we had over 6,000, 7,000 employees take the introduction to understanding implicit bias. It's the first time ever in the district that it's been done that way. And so to build on that, we've now added it again as a part of the required. So we haven't pulled the data about this time of the year when we pull them to see how many people took them. We can drill down to every school to see who didn't, and then go back and ask them to have those staff members take it. But the Broward County consultant work is going to take us to a whole nother level. And I know it is because I know the impact that they've done given the circumstances there. Now I've got to be able to scale it here, resource it, plan for the tentative working budget for next year. Again, it's one thing to create concepts and ideas into a fiscal year, but you have to plan for them appropriately if you really want them to happen. So we're probably 6 months to a year out of even bringing that to fruition because, again, funding has to be found to make it happen.
I think
Oh.
I just want to say real quick, one of the things too is that when we talk about like Broward County and, Austin is one, Richmond, Virginia has Chesterfield County and Henrico. We also have Wake County and Raleigh. These are these are our benchmarks, and these are who we are looking at. And we're looking at other urban districts who have similar circumstances, poverty and whatnot. There is no other school district in Fayette or in Kentucky that we can really get from. And I think that's kind of part of what we've been echoing to build too. I mean, Jefferson County is its own beast from the busing situation, from the population, it's just, it does not look like us, and it's not meant to be our benchmark. And we can learn things from each other, but that's not a comparable school district to really look at and doesn't have the same stuff. And so that's one thing is that we really have been going and working with these other districts. Like I know the chamber trip this year is in Austin. We are working as board members to do some things with some of the like the Education Foundation and with the school district there that we've been so we're going to meet with people, like we're going to piggyback off this and make it a 2-for-1. So we are all kind of out there working.
I would say that we're Jim. We're a model in many regards. That's the part I don't hear. And I don't look for pats on the back too often. Believe me. I've pulled myself up by my bootstraps to try to get to where I am. And unfortunately, the world has taught me some level of resilience to have to operate that way, the nature of being who I am in America. So given that, I deal with school districts all over the country. And they look to the work that we've done. If you take the comprehensive 10-point safety plan, the state adopted it after they saw the work that was done. But that's a plan that has not been matched literally across the country when it comes to putting in the safety initiatives comprehensively. It's been an a la carte menu for some schools in districts where they've chosen parts and pieces. We, for the most part, has implemented 8 of the 10, and the other 2 pieces lies now in the work we're doing with collective impact. So I say that to say you got to celebrate yourself at some point. Continuous improvement is what we always will operate from, but you also have to pause and celebrate some of the work that our great 8,000 employees do every single day.
And I think that, I mean, I want to echo that too, because we are, from our board, our staff, administration, getting asked to speak all over the country about our 10-point safety plan. When the 5 of us went to KSBA board training last week, in all the sessions, they just talked about how we as a community stepped up and said, you know, not only are we going to look at the safety as far as the alarms and metal detectors and I think, but that we really said, you know what, we want those nurses, we want those mental health professionals, and we're going to go big or go home. And we've been able to do that. One thing that was reported at our last board meeting is that we actually are below 1 in 250, like our goal, like when we started this was we had like 1 mental health professional for like almost 400 and something. We are at 1 and less than 250 at our middle schools and high schools, and just slightly above 250, like 260, at our elementary schools. And so that's huge.
And we started about 350 to 1 or so. I'll lastly add this point, and it comes to, I'll talk about our CSI status, and as you all know, we only had 1 school. We had 7 at one point, and to enter no schools into that category or that classification speaks to the work, not just to the core of our academic outcomes, but it also speaks to PBIS, it speaks to classroom management, it speaks to restorative practice, because you cannot learn if you got a disruptive learning environment. And so knowing all that, again, without factoring all what it takes to move 6 schools out of that status and not enter a single school in. Now, there's a school district we just mentioned and others that moved 20 or more schools into that classification. Again, it speaks to the work and the strategic work. I mean, the strategic plan is what's very, very important because, again, prior to 5 years ago, I came to work every single day. I've said that to you all before. But now we operate from a strategic plan based on that work and how we monitor that every day. And again, the staff across the district they're to be commended for sticking to it and taking the whips and slings of outrageous fortune that comes with the work that we do in this space. So again, we will continue to improve. We certainly have not thrown up our victory flag because there's a lot of kids and a lot of gaps. That's why we do this work around equity, to ensure that we keep a spotlight on those areas where we know we can do better.
I'm about to stop you, man. You quoting poetry over there now.
That was in English.
Ms. Thompson.
I want to applaud the district for promoting the unconscious bias training. I really am excited for the time when it will go into every school. And I had a question. Do you have a staff person who is certified to give these trainings, or do you guys outsource?
Great question. So within my office is restorative practice, and I just got back my staff after a week's worth of training, who's now trained the trainer capacity that can train inside the district. We also will be consulting outside work, particularly with schools that show a propensity to need it now. So we're going to do some direct contract work with them along with that staff person. Then we've had teams within the Student Support Service offices trained in this space. We did about 45 staff back in September for modules 1 and 2, and we're bringing them back 3 and 4 around mental health. And so yes is the answer to that, and we continue to add capacity to more people so that we have a train-the-trainer model and not just bringing in consultants from a cost standpoint. We can do it ourselves, yes.
Great conversation. Thank you. Any others? Seeing none, we will continue on since the superintendent is,
Just a quick, so am I correct in remembering that the implicit bias training was online? That's what the
One that
6,000
all
or
7,
7,000
but
did, right?
there's
Right.
additional.
So and when you said 3 and 4 modules.
Well, that's around mental health training. I'm sorry, that's around the restorative practice and restorative justice, the big group that we got to address some of the issues that's been brought up around.
So if they all were required to do it last year, they checked their box, when they have to do it this year, is it the next phase or stage?
So it's a repeat.
Build on itself, or-
It's a repeat, and that's amazing that you asked that question. Because if I was to ask you, have you ever been trained in racial discrimination? And you said yes. Are you
I
cured?
was born in
All right,
America,
right.
of course I know how to
All
discriminate
right.
racially.
So
What are
then
you
my
talking
follow-up question, are you cured, all right?
about? Unfortunately, no.
And likewise, if you ask me that same question, we have this open, courageous dialogue. I would say, why don't we go back to the beginning and figure out if we got the basics, you know?
Yeah.
And typically, we miss the basics, thinking that we need to go to higher level stuff. It's the simple stuff that we don't pay attention to because we think it's for compliance base. Muscle memory takes place because of the monotony of having to get it over and over and over again. So it's not a bad idea right now, given the new introduction of this comprehensively, to have staff revisit that. Imagine bloodborne pathogens and all the stuff that comes with OSHA, properly setting up a ladder, making sure you put gloves on and eye protection, that we throw to the wind when it comes to caution, yet we have to go back and take those trainings every year to remind ourselves of them. Similarly, in this space, and I use that analogy because it's not that we need to go to an advanced state of knowing. It's more about behaviors, beliefs, and values that we have to be reminded of that don't align to some of the work that we do. So the basics work right for now,
Yeah.
if you accept that.
Good, thank you.
All right. Well, let's transition to subcommittee reports, and we'll get started. And so we'll start with Kim. Ms. Thompson.
So on November 25th, the Excellent Student Outcomes Committee presented at the board meeting on our research about the peer support networks and peer support groups. And I think it was well received, and we got a commitment from the Director of Special Education that they will adopt the program at Morton Middle School. So we prepared a 15-minute video, which we didn't show. We gave the board members a link to the video, and I'll email that. Do you have a copy of that
It was
link?
embedded in the minutes.
Was it
that
in the
I got,
minutes?
yes,
Okay, so you
yes.
guys can click on that video and watch it if you would like.
I'll
And
forward it out to them.
Okay, and it just outlines the presentation, but in a much more multimedia way. I think it does a better job than we did of stumbling through our conversation. But, so Morton will hopefully do this program for the next academic year, and then we can revisit and see if there's any difference in student outcomes from years previous. Ideally, we'd like to see it go for 3 years, and I think we have that commitment that they will do that for the next several years, longer if they want. It's free. It's really just a matter of getting people in to train the staff, and hopefully it'll be a nice win-win situation, and we'll see what the data looks like in a couple of years. I think we're still interested in presenting to the group of principals, if that's a possibility, to see if there is any other middle school that may want to adopt the program, maybe when they hear about, how the logistics worked for Morton and realize it should be fairly easy. They'll be interested in doing that, and we can see something positive and evidence-based spread.
So, and I met with the group, Dr. McCormick and Gretchen, and as I mentioned when they did the presentation in October 1st, they presented the model for how to go about making a recommendation, being educational researchers, and pulling together evidence, and then coming back to this body with the recommendation written and back to the board. And so in between the time of October 1 and now, I've met with the group, helped them understand and navigate how to integrate their work in a partnership way like you did, get them before the board. As Ms. Spires mentioned, I was absent from the board meeting. I'll share with you all why, if you all are interested. It was my 25th anniversary with my wife, so I took her to Miami. So I think I was, but I was
think you
still
have an
getting texts
excuse.
about the meeting, believe it or not. But no, that being aside, just so you think I was
Well, it
not.
was just funny because they wrote like their name and then they wrote equity report, but it wasn't an item on the equity report. But I think it was because I think they should have been. It was
Yeah,
just-
so in my absence, I didn't want it to get all, so I helped coach them as much as I could. They played a great game. I think they came out a winner, actually, but they were well prepared. You all were very prepared. And I think they created a compelling why, not just to the board, and they had the staff there. All of our chiefs, and I shared with them how this would be much more of a rich conversation, and not to walk away feeling like they haven't been heard, because you're going to be in a bigger audience than they were able to have here. And with that transition, I spoke to them about district leadership meetings, which we have every month with our leadership teams, and how I will work to liaise that conversation with our chief of staff to get them on the agenda, do the same thing, so that success can breed success. And again, it's not this, let's hurry up and see how many we can get done. We're going to use a qualitative approach to letting success breed success. And when others see it, they'll want it. And the data will say, well, why didn't we do it earlier? You know, that's how it typically says, well, we could have done this 3 years ago. And so that's the approach. They did a great job, so I commend you all on your work.
Thanks for your help.
And I think that staff, just to kind of echo this, one thing that the special ed Amanda Dennison said was that they, I think, kind of selected Morton. Well, again, and you all did a great job too. I noted that how you all changed, and you realized that we as a board can't dictate that they all have to do it. So, you know, presenting it to each school, but that they had been looking at it at that per way, but they were looking intentionally at the data of the populations in those schools to kind of figure out where to start. And that's how they landed on Morton, which I thought was interesting. And I think and I could be dreaming, that whole night is a blur. But I think there was like 2 other schools possibly interested. Is that what they said, kind of?
I didn't catch that.
Maybe
but
I just dreamed that up, or it could have been another conversation I had. But I do think other schools are being considered and or interested. So.
Great. Yep. Great job. Yep. Yeah, I thought it would definitely went well. I actually did talk to one of the employees that's over a group of the group of the principals as well, to just kind of mention it to that person about having one of the schools possibly take a look at it. So we'll see to help out. I mean, you know, if we can.
And one point, we have board meetings every month, all right? And we have 2 of them, actually, that you all are certainly welcome to attend. I would encourage you to attend. There's a standing agenda with items. There is a section under that agenda called the Equity Update. It's not an Equity Council update. It's an equity update on the work the district does across the month. And so I give reports I'll bring in and allow space for other staff across the district to share out areas that may have focus on, when you use the word equity, it's kind of mask the work, is really on impact. What are we done? It could be in agriculture, introducing more marginalized student populations to that field. So it could be UK in the Manners program, or it could be United Way and building healthier families. So, I mean, it's always something every month. So I would encourage you, if you really want to know the work of the Equity Office and what we do to support and catalyze equity across our district, that's the place to hear it, because it is a requirement of me to give the board an update in the public. It's a live meeting, not just to the board, where our constituency is able to hear that work. So
And sometimes we've done the things in this meeting under that. I think that item, though, should have been its own, like,
Right.
item, and that's what I can.
that's what my intent was, but
Right.
I probably should have told her before I left.
Right, because I could have. There's 2 things I could have done at the meeting that night. Just in case we get this ever situation, in the meeting that night, I could have added it and just made a motion to add, just kind of like how we moved right here and added it in.
'Cause I've
But
given you
I
a folder.
actually make the agenda on the front end, so if you get to me like a week in advance, I
So
can,
that's where, when we get together
yeah.
in our
Then
standing meetings
The
in
superintendent
January.
and I make the agenda.
Great.
All right, great, thank you. All right, anybody, Craig, anything? Lois?
Yeah, sorry, I
Oh,
just wanted to also
Dominique?
talk about the gifted subcommittee. So that's been progressing well, and people are actually, we have a new format of people presenting, like Vita Stewart, which was very helpful. So I'm hoping that after I'm gone, that somebody else will take the lead for the gifted subcommittee and not leave it hanging, because there's been a lot of progress. And hope somebody's interested in continuing it.
Your term over?
My term's over, and I somehow submitted an application that got lost in cyberspace, which I take as a sign.
She thinks she's going somewhere, she doesn't know. so-
I mean, there's only
That's it.
5 for 6, right?
Yeah.
Just saying.
Let's segue to this point.
Yeah.
Open the discussion there.
I'd like to just say that I've been to 2 audit committee meetings, and I think we were going to make a file that I could drop some of those documents in for everybody to see, because they're big, thick binders of information. So I don't know how to pass that information on to you, but it's probably on the website.
To get access to.
Yeah,
I'll work with Rodney Jackson
right,
and John White
right.
to create a Google folder for you all to be able
Okay,
to see.
just drop all the, yeah.
That would be good. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. All right. Anyone else? Brett?
Family Community Engagement Subcommittee hosted a phenomenal, again, Family University on the 9th of November at Henry Clay. I say phenomenal again, based on the past 2 or 3 that I've been to, because I was not there. But Youth Academy, Resource Fair, caregiver sessions. The caregiver sessions, like, there's so many people taking care of students who are not their, they're not their own children. They're their grandchildren. They're their friends or who knows. But that was another added benefit to the Family University platform. Yeah, it's a phenomenal thing. And the next one is, I don't know.
And
April,
it's a partnership, right? It's
We
with-
do it in partnership with the Urban League,
Right.
the LIFT conference, yes.
Yes. Yeah, and there's like $10,000 scholarships that are going to be
Yes.
given out, that we hope to give all 10 of them out. But you got to be there, and
You could be there to win.
you got to ask for it too. I mean,
Can you be a freshman?
No.
Asking for a friend.
I don't know.
On that note, and this is something I recently brought up to Daryl and to Superintendent Cock, and like when I say we're in the infancy stages, we're like the hamster wheel is going, and I had the idea and I blurted it out.
Brainstorming. Right on.
Yes, but I would like the district to do Family University or something. So what you just mentioned is the caregivers. So we have the KC Foundation announced last week that their best estimate is 31,000 kids avoided foster care last year because they were placed with a relative, and we had 18,000 kids in foster care.
Wow.
In Kentucky last year. So that tells you what's going on, and that's not even those being raised by grandparents unofficially. Like, this is just that. We have a struggle in the district with, and I own it, when helping these families navigate all of our programs, whether it's gifted, whether it's getting interventions. How do I get an IEP? Do I have educational rights? Do I not have educational rights? There's just a lot of confusion around it. And so I really would like to put together a workshop that's a one-day, like a Family University, that maybe we can even partner with DCBS and have it as a training for foster families and these families to get their hours. But I think we need a true educational training, because I spend so much time on the phone just helping people navigate how to access these things.
And so, we actually did a small-scale version of that last month at UK, called a Zoom meeting, where we invited maybe 8 of our departments to do a voiceover out into the community, and then we recorded it to talk about work in their space and how parents in the community can access services from special education to the alternative services in the high school office, DPP's office. It was a parent there that also did her Zoom presentation out into the cyberspace so that families could hear from a parent perspective how to navigate and support. So we scaled it. We started it last month,
Right.
and we plan to build on that. We did another event called the Link Session, linking youth to, I forget the other acronym, at the YMCA. We deal with acronyms all day.
You dropped, earlier in this meeting, you dropped about 6. And I was like,
Look,
I need a
it's-
chart. I need a chart.
Obviously, we need a chart. We get
So
we
that
remember
that
the
meeting was about 200 participants of social workers, and so when we pull all that together, along with the collective impact work that we're doing with all of these partners in the city, United Way, the mayor's office, BCTC, Create GED classes and stuff like that, it will culminate into what you've idealized as a workshop. So we're scaling it right now because it is a big.
And it's hurting our district. I mean, it's hurting our schools too. Like when a kid shows up on Monday morning and you have no paperwork and you don't know
Yep.
what classes
think
they should
Dominique
be in or
and,
shouldn't be in.
You and I talked about that for last year, particularly around refugee families
Yeah.
that don't have an interpreter, doesn't know which paperwork or who to trust, and so absolutely.
So really trying to figure out how to connect with these families that may not be able to access even the Zoom technology. You know,
Yeah,
so that's where my head
exactly.
is like, the hamster wheel is merging Family U with this, like, you know, and giving them DCBS credit. If I can get that in, everyone will be there.
You know, that's interesting. I was just having that conversation with my wife the other day about can we use Zoom in some of this space. So that's interesting to hear him talking about that. I'm glad to hear that. And then you just mentioned about having access to even that, which, you know, she brought that up to me. I'm like, yeah, a lot of people have these things right here, right, which is it's just an app. They may not have access to a computer, possibly, but this is a computer. But I'm just applauding the fact that we're trying to at least eliminate roadblocks to getting to information, right? So that goes back to how do we get outside the box to communicate better to others. So I applaud.
Can I just add one thing to that? My daughter's at Tate's Creek's pre-IB program, and she's been paired with a Rwandan refugee because her teacher said, I don't think he understands what's going on, and you do, and you basically you need to help mentor him, which I thought was fabulous, first of all, because actually my daughter is very interested in refugees. It works well. But is there any space for also training kids to take care of other kids? Because there are a lot of kids, well, maybe not a lot, but there are some kids like my daughter who would really like to take that kind of mentorship lead, even in classrooms.
Well, you know, that's interesting because that's what their program is about.
Well,
It's for ESL and.
That's exactly what
this
it's
isn't just ESL.
It's
I mean,
funny.
he speaks swimming, but he doesn't get the culture and the concepts
But he
and the
would fall
background.
under that.
it's
I mean,
peer,
at
based on
Morton, a
whatever the
kid like
peer.
that would be put in this program, because they're going to do it at Morton.
I guess what I'm saying is until that gets applied to every school,
Right.
is there something that we can do this year that's not costly, that can, you know, sort of encourage teachers to do that? Because I could see how, you know, first of all, whenever you teach somebody something, it does, as you know, solidify the knowledge that you have. And it helps people acculturate much better. I can only imagine this poor boy's experience. Like, he speaks some English, but political science, Democrats and Republicans, he was in
You could
Rwanda.
reach out to individual schools. I mean, like, at least at Henry Clay, I know they've got the Key Club, which is really big into volunteering and mentoring, and then the academy itself has their own set of tutors that will tutor just the academy kids. I mean, there's different little organizations at each school that I think if you, now, I don't know who you would need to talk to get them all in one room to, like, present that kind of information, but, I mean, the kids are out there and they're willing to do it.
Well, I'll
Right.
share this
Need
with
to
you.
know.
Elections have
Good point.
consequences, as we know, and 2 years ago, circa 2 years ago, we had a scaled plan to open a Newcomers Academy. And that Newcomers Academy was for students new to the district, new to the country, and first-time English language learners in many cases. We visited Cincinnati. They have a Newcomers Academy integrated across their system where kids go until they get proficiency, and we actually watched this process. The election occurred, and the number of students identified in our city to open that school did not yield the projected numbers that we wanted to justify it to the board. And so the Newcomers Academy did not get open, but we will be revisiting that now that the population growth has occurred, so that those services are available and kids aren't in learning environments where language is a barrier and things like that. So there is a systematic plan.
And I think that's fabulous, and I'm very glad to hear it, but I guess I'm saying sometimes small steps
Yeah, I mean-
now
Well, and
are
she
helpful.
mentioned Henry Clay, and I think Henry Clay does a really good job of, they identify at-risk students somehow, and I don't know their formula, I just.
It's an early warning indicator that we built that allows them
And
to.
they partner them up so to make sure that they're not eating lunch. Like, so they do have a mentorship program over there. And I've heard from students on both sides, and it seems to be really organic. Because my one thing is always that, you know, how much information do you give out and how much do you. But I do think you say something. So, again, going back to my new placement, the reason he lives with us is because my 5-year-old daughter is his best friend, and because she has been able to kind of mentor him and work with him, and she has like just enough trauma knowledge to be dangerous. And so, but it's interesting. A therapist told me this weekend they believe that she is the only person in the world he 100% trusts, and that's another 5-year-old. So that to me has been really showing to me, yes, the power of your peers. Because that's why we made the decision to move him into our home, was that was where he felt the safest, and he articulated to his therapist and others that he wanted to live with us. But it's because of that, like the two of them had their own little 5-year-old friendship that blossomed. So
Yeah, I think Talithia hit on something that was probably the simplest thing to do, which is engaging the school and seeing if you could pull a different student groups together and just have a quick conversation around it. I don't know how you access that, like, would you go to the principal, would you go through the PTA? I don't know how you.
Principal Little's very approachable, but I can give you, if you remind me, the name of the teacher who's over the Key Club, just because I know she'll know who else you can talk to in the school.
Well, I know just from personal experience, and sometimes the personal informs the overall. You know, I know several kids who want to tutor at Tate's Creek's high school's pre-IB program, and who are interested in, and they've asked to tutor, and the answer's been like, yeah. And I don't know who they've asked, so I'm not pointing
Right.
fingers. You know, it could have been the inappropriate person, whatever, but it's an easy thing, you know, to kind of relatively. I'm not doing
They
it, so I
have,
say it's easy.
Not an academic coach, but like a dean. Doesn't the IB program itself have like a
Director, they have a director.
director or a dean that kind of
Yes, although that's pre-IB is 2 years, so IB is only 2 years. So you'd want somebody who'd be there for the full 4 years. Because the way that the IB program works is you're not in it until 11th grade.
No, I just meant like maybe that's who you would need to talk to about getting the tutoring set up in that particular program.
I'm also working on a district-wide tutoring program with a student from Dunbar who approached us about a month ago for creating and sustaining a platform, even after she leaves, where students lead the tutoring each year. So I'm sitting here saying, do I say something or do I just keep working? Because I would share a name. Actually, I'm going to bring her before you all. It's just the holiday has broken up scheduling, and then I go over and meet with her and try to meet with her in between classes. She's in the MTS program, MSTC program.
Another
And so I don't want to disrupt her
You have to get
Is
there
it
at
another
6
acronym?
a.m.
So I
All
mean,
our
it's
kids
just,
and
it's just
all their
balancing.
spare time.
So we're working on a platform through, and I plugged in our IT department, our technology department, so that we can start building this. We've just got to continue working at it. I mean, it's crazy how schedules are, and not being in the same place, the same time
Can
every
I
day.
put in a plug for Tate's Creek being the next one, because there
Well,
is,
it'll be district-wide. It'll be a district-wide platform where Tate's Creek could plug in to start the online platform mentoring to kids all over the district and get it for free. And so we're working to build out the concept, yeah.
Great.
She just brought it to us, and so we're trying to make it happen.
Okay, and I'm looking at time, and the clock
Yeah,
is
do
ticking.
elections.
Gotta do this. I already skipped F, and we on, but I'm being mindful of everybody in this 8 o'clock hour, not trying to take you over. Any last minute discussions before we?
What calls, man?
Dominic, just give me a buzz and I'll give you some names, because I forgot there's another one that's, they've got another program for, I think it's called Equity in Advanced Placement Classes. And it's just another mentoring program for kids who are taking advanced placement classes, and they have mentors that they have to meet with, like, at least 20 minutes once a week. For the semester, they kind of had like a little find your own mentor thing, or speed dating, as I called it. They go
Right
in
down
and
her alley.
Speed mentoring.
and they picked up their mentor, and they, so like, I think Xavier has two. He has one that's tutoring him, and like, one is like really good in math, and one's really good in English, and he's like, well, go see this one today, and this one on this day, and those are kids that have gone through the program, and as part of the program, you have to give back. So when you're an upperclassman, you have to be a mentor to an underclassman, and that one's real simple. Low-hanging fruit.
All right. All right. Thank you all. Great discussion. Thanks for the subcommittee reports. Seeing none, we will go ahead and transition to F that I missed earlier. And that is review of 5 applicants received and elections to fill the 5 of 6 elected seats. So in front of you all, you have the names that that are on the ballot to be voted on.
And also sent you this electronically, everything, this packet of the profiles and the applications, the bios, and the resumes for the applicants that were received. Thought I was getting it to you in time enough for you to make the decision tonight. I also wanted to clarify, even though we introduced at the October 1st meeting, this would be taking place based on the bylaw structure. This body and those 6 members who were 5 that were currently serving had the opportunity to apply. And just want to, I'll shift it back to you, clarify to those 6 members that may not have gotten an application in, or their decision not to reapply, if you want to open the table for the floor for that conversation. I did engage a member in the process who I did not find receipt of their application, and anybody that received that sent an application got a follow-up email from me confirming that I had receipt of their application. That's part of the standard process. So she and I have talked about my non-receipt and some options that she may have going forward to continue her role in supporting this body. So with that, there will be some vacancies since we don't have 6 applicants for 5 seats, and this body will then do a special called election to fill that last seat. The applicant can then submit and/or pursue their role through one appointment that's still open from Daniel Whitley's resignation under board member Ray Daniels. That seat still has a 1-year term left on it, and so I'll be making recommendations to Mr. Daniels for members to serve in that spot if somebody decides not to pursue their seat through the election process. All right. So just wanted to put that out there for if there was anybody else that thought they submitted and didn't. All right.
All right.
I was glad when I found that it was extended by a day, so there might be talking to 2 people.
It was actually extended several weeks from the time we talked about it, October 1, through November 18th.
Oh, really?
Yes, I extended it in the.
You were early.
Early for the first time in my life. How about that?
Work on that. No.
It's one of
All
my
right.
2020 resolutions, is like to do things as.
I'm gonna wait for that until 2021.
So there's a lot of stuff in here, though. I thought it would be very, very useful for you, from our equity statement to our mission statement to our portrait of a graduate. Just stuff around equity, I think, that helps shape and form your thoughts as we make these decisions, and then the bylaws for the record.
And you can take some time and read through, glance through these resumes, especially for those that you may not know.
So-
If you don't have to, oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to recommend the knowledge that if we have current council members who meant to apply but did not, this body tonight can choose to not select some folks for appointment and open up more seats if there's more than one person. And we can have a special, as you said, a special election in January, where we don't have to open it up to the public for anything. He looks at his files. I don't think there's any application in files, so we just accept nominations in January to fill open seats.
Yeah, actually, you was reading my mind, because I was just about to say that even though there are, that's what I was going to say, if you read through these and you find that it's just not in, you don't want to vote for like every one of them, you don't necessarily have to. However, we do have 5 candidates on here, and there's 6 open seats for election. And is the one with Ray Daniels, is that one of the 6? That's the appointed. So it's actually technically 7 seats that would need to be filled. So just wanted to get clarity around that.
And one last point I will make, when you get a chance to look at the bylaws, when we revised them, it was very, very intentional that when you have moments like this, that you look at the diversity and inclusion of the body. It would be an oxymoron for this group to be homogeneous, right? And speak about equity. So that's not what we want, but it's your decision. And so be mindful when you do that. Look around the table, listen to the voices, think about what's not here and what might need to be here when it comes to representation of our community and our families. And then use that intentionality to allow for opportunities for those roles to be filled. This, again, is your decision, but we want to be mindful that we're doing it with that lens and that opportunity to be diverse and inclusive.
How do we proceed? Do we just mark our ballots?
I'm just going to do it based on, again, the bylaws set in motion, a clear and articulate procedure. We spent almost
What's that?
on the roll call balloting.
Oh, yeah.
So
This
it will
fun stuff.
be a roll call open
Oh, okay.
vote.
It's a roll call vote for each individual person at a
Okay.
time. So I'll go around and do a roll call whenever we're at that point.
Okay.
That can be found on page 13 of the booklet, the voting process.
Very detailed. And I believe we have, I'm just gonna say it, we have 2 current members who meant to apply that did not.
Right.
No, we can't do write-in, no write-ins, but if we want to consider that when we vote on how many seats we fill.
And so if there is the event where the special election is publicized, it will allow the public, again, everyone in the public to apply for those vacant seats if they are available, the number of seats, et cetera. Be open to the public. Whether or not I spend $349 for the Herald League under section 7
Filling vacancies.
of resignations, yes. Those are not
He
resignations.
resigned, right?
Yeah, that's just that one, right? That's
Right.
right.
So,
That's correct.
and this one you don't publicize.
Right. So it's be
Right.
that. Right. Would only be a special election for seats not filled tonight as a result of this election, not the seat.
about this Brett guy here.
Are we ready to proceed?
I have a question. So how do we leave a seat open if we need 2 seats open? Does that mean that no one votes for one of the candidates?
Well, no,
They get 0 votes?
it's a majority vote rule.
Right, so what I would say to that question is not an intent to leave seats open. It's to cast your vote for those individuals that you feel will represent this body. And that, again, is your voting privilege, which means you don't have to cast a vote for anybody on the ballot if you don't feel those individuals, based on their profile, their application, their commitment statement, their resume, meets the profile for this body. It's not an intent to leave any seats available. It's to select individuals that have put forth their application. Have to be impeccable with your words. For the record.
Does anyone
All right, anybody?
need more time?
Yeah, anybody need extra time, or we'll go ahead and start the roll call vote? Seeing no objections,
I'm seeing something.
No, I'm just confused as to,
yeah, it's a little confusing just because of the whole, there's 2 council members that we did not receive app that has an intention to still be on, which is now causing everybody to try to figure out how do we still compensate for that. I would just say that there are 7 seats available,
is this including the one vacated by Daniel?
including the one vacated by Daniel.
Okay.
We
That
were
seat
coming
is not
tonight
an
to vote
election.
for 6.
Okay,
We were coming tonight to vote for 6. Daniel's seat is a appointed seat, so that would have to be appointed through Ray Daniel. All right, so, but there are literally 7 seats available.
That's correct.
So just, you have to.
And I will be submitting several names to Mr. Daniels for consideration for that one seat.
So you don't have to vote for everybody on the form, but we will call your name. And so, how this will work is Mr. Kamick will call each one of us, will call the name of the person on the ballot. Example, Glenda George, and then he would vote himself, and then Glenda can't vote on herself. She's not here, but then he'll go around the room and you'll say yay or nay, and then he'll call the next person on the ballot and do the same thing. Okay? Any other questions? All right, seeing none, we'll open up the ballot.
All right, so our first applicant is Glenda George. Craig Kamick, yay. Glenda George, absent. Lois Gillespie,
Yay.
Shayla Lynch,
Nay.
Abdul Mohammed,
Yay.
Brett Nathaniel,
Yay.
Dominique Aubert,
Yay.
Alethea Rout,
yay.
and Kimberly Thompson.
Yay.
Next applicant is Lois Gillespie. Craig Kamick, yay. Glenda George, absent. Lois Gillespie,
Yay.
Shayla Lynch,
Yay.
Abdul Mohammed,
Yay.
Brett Nathaniel,
Yay.
Dominique Aubert,
An enthusiastic yay.
Alethea Rout,
Yay.
Kimberly Thompson.
Yay.
Next applicant is Nicole Jenkins. Craig Kamick, yay. Glenda George, absent. Lois Gillespie,
Yay.
Shayla Lynch,
Nay.
Abdul Mohammed,
Yay.
Brett Nathaniel,
Yay.
Dominique Aubert,
Yay.
Alethea Rout,
Yay.
Kimberly Thompson.
Yay.
Our next individual or applicant is Desiree Marshall. Craig Kamick, nay. Glenda George is absent. Lois Gillespie,
Nay.
Shayla Lynch,
Yay.
Abdul Mohammed,
Yeah.
Brett Nathaniel,
Yay.
Dominique Aubert,
Nay.
Alethea Rout,
Yay.
and Kimberly Thompson.
Yay.
And our last applicant, Brett Nathaniel. Craig Kamick, yay. Glenda George, absent. Lois Gillespie,
Yay.
Shayla Lynch,
Yay.
Abdul Muhammad,
Tough nut. Yeah, yeah.
Brett Nathaniel,
Cannot abstain from meeting. Do not make me go into.
Recuse yourself either.
why
so-
would you?
Have to be
Not
out.
mandated.
Okay.
Yay.
I can put no if you want.
Not be in the room.
We could put a
By Kara.
contingency on there about giving some mental health counseling.
I'll take it. I get, oof.
Dominique Aubert,
Yay.
Alethea Rout,
I mean, oh, I guess so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yay.
and Kimberly Thompson.
Yay.
Around
Six
the-
votes, right?
6.
Thirds majority of seats, not majority of people. Yeah.
Right, the number of
So
seats.
6 seats has to be, okay, 6 votes.
I didn't vote for myself, and I ended up tying for class treasurer one year. Just saying. Sometimes you gotta vote for yourself.
Did it keep you out of
Yeah, I was reading about it.
No, it just meant like you had a co-treasurer. Like it's like complicated.
Yeah, I don't do that. I tell my daughter to vote for yourself in whatever you're like. That's very serious. Like,
Linus became class president because the other guy voted for Linus.
Safety, what is that?
What do we got?
My best friend voted for me, and I voted for me. You got 2 votes.
Okay.
Voted for each other and ourselves.
I don't need, do I need to?
Yeah, you go sign.
At the, oh, you sign it. Okay, that's what I'm, that's all right.
just sign it.
Yes,
Right.
Probably because we got in trouble most of the time.
You're not the safety patrol.
all right.
Neighborhood more than the school.
Baby.
I got it. What you, do I need to say the numbers or just who, I'll just say who the,
Majority or lack of
Right,
majority.
yeah,
okay.
that's the signed sheet.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so the vote tally is the newly elected board members will be Glenda George, Lois Gillespie, Nicole Jenkins, and Brett Nathaniel. All had majority votes. So there will be a special election next month where we will have to fill 2 seats plus the appointed seats. So there's still,
One seat,
No,
right?
let's not commingle that. We'll have a special election to fill 2 seats. We'll
right,
have
When Mr. Daniels appoints someone.
well, that's,
separate.
right,
Separate
right,
from the special election, yeah.
exactly. So everybody got that? There's
So I
still
will
2 seats to
advertise
be.
again, and we'll probably do those advertisements the last 2 weeks of December, and then into the first week, and you all can make a motion to confirm that if that's a amenable timeline. You have to figure out what's happening during so the 20th is the last official school day for the district. That doesn't mean I won't be working during that time, but, so we want to get some business taken care of before then. So that's why I backed myself up to the 15th and let it run on our website, and then past New Year's. The 2nd is the first day back for schools. Is that correct?
No, the 6th.
The 6th is the first day back. The 2nd is first day back for us. So-
Weird here.
Yeah, so that gives us, again, week 1 after New Year's, and
The
then
way
week
Chris,
2
the
in
holidays
schools.
fall weird this year.
So if we went to the 15th, they'd give us 30-day window to collect
Would rather be-
applications. So if someone make a motion to advertise and post for that period,
Can we give them
December 15th to January 15th,
this
I make a motion that we advertise during that time period.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor to advertise during that period. It's been properly second. Any questions, concerns, clarity needed? Okay, seeing none.
yes. And again, it costs $349 to get a 2-day advertisement, a Friday and a Sunday in the Herald Leader. And this body recommended and took action that I utilize that fund to do it again. I will ask if you all feel it's prudent to advertise at that cost again for that month. Only budget for $349. But I do have the board chair that might be able
Can you not advertise in their online venue?
It's
for-
part of it, yeah.
They
It's a
still
part of
charge
the,
They
it.
still charge?
Charge
they still
more.
charge, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And you see the advertisement. The advertisement's actually in your booklet that went to the, into the,
Digital's where they make all their money.
yeah.
Print.
And again, with 5 applicants, one, I think, may have seen it in the paper.
I would not be opposed to foregoing putting it in the paper this time, since it's been in the paper previously.
Okay, so if you'll make a motion as a,
I make a motion that we forego putting it in the Herald Leader for this.
floor,
Did I?
maybe
It was,
There
it
is
was a motion on the
that has
floor.
been seconded, so we need to close
Right.
out that because
Yeah.
this isn't really an
Right.
amendment on. I think first you gotta make
Oh,
sure.
we didn't vote on this
It
one?
was,
No.
he went into questions
You gotta vote on
about,
that to then decide how you're gonna advertise.
Right, yeah.
If you don't vote on that, then you're not
Or
advertising.
amend it, but say with no
Amend it with-
Herald Leader.
But I think it's hard to amend because it's a weird, only because you have to do it to do it.
Right, to do it.
do it to do it.
It's not really a true amendment.
okay, call for the vote. Do you remember what we're voting on? You're voting on that being
Timeline.
advertised from the
Yeah.
15th to the 15th?
12:15 to 1:15.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any will abstain? Motion passes. Okay, did you?
I make a motion that we forego advertising in the Herald Leader for this round.
Second.
Hey, there's a motion on the floor to forego advertising a Herald Leader this time, and it's been properly second. Any other questions, discussion?
Just a point of clarification, maybe say any paid advertising because you're still planning on advertising it, and that could be the difference between, because you're still gonna advertise it through our.
So we'll use all
Because
social,
we just voted on the dates we're advertising it,
Yeah.
and so
she
just.
said the Herald Leader.
She said the Herald Leader, I think.
Right. I just was saying, I mean, this is me just throwing my thoughts out there. Like the difference, just saying all paid advertisement.
Because
Be
I did place them in all the public libraries' applications on our social media website, page, as well as our district site. So there was an extensive advertisement done, and I'll do that this again.
Paid advertisements.
I'll drop them off at the libraries again.
You good with that, Lois? Paid
Yeah,
advertisement?
yeah. Should I make another
Seconded. I'm
motion?
good with it.
So you have to do you have to revise that motion?
We did.
We both did.
Okay.
We both agreed.
Okay, all right. I'm getting tired and delirious now.
Me too.
Okay. All right, so
We need to vote.
we need to vote on the motion on the floor to not use paid advertisement. All in favor, aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstain? Motion passes. Thank you. So the one person that's on this ballot still has an opportunity to
Reapply.
reapply, and they'll be notified as well, because that was a very close vote there. So I think that person deserves to know that they definitely have an opportunity to reapply, and be part of the election.
And also make a recommendation
coming
to
as
the
well.
board member for that person, since they're a part of the
So
application.
he does have someone, I believe, that will be ready to go in January.
Well, I'll have that conversation.
Okay. All right. Okay, anything else? Let's see here. Did anyone sign up for public
I
communication?
didn't sign up, but can I bring a question to the floor, to the committee?
Sure, go right ahead.
Okay, so we all agree, this is something that's been bothering me and concerning me, I should say, for 10 years, because I've seen it come and go through various experiences that I've had with my kids over the last several years. Obviously, we all agree there should be equity, equal access to extracurricular activities. And I think that that's very apparent for kids with physical disabilities, but there's often an issue where it comes to race, or it comes to hidden disabilities. And I had a situation brought to my attention today, and it did last year. So there are 2 academic competitions in the district. One is, I think it's called One Community, One Voice, and they do something called Academic Challenge that's open to elementary students. There's another forum, it's Governor's Cup, and it's a little more competitive, a little more fast-paced, and that's elementary and middle school. So last year, I advocated that they should respect students with hidden disabilities like dyslexia, ADHD, ADD, and grant them extended time that they were granted in school to be able to participate in some of these extracurricular competitions, because they had not been doing that, and it really excluded these kids because they show up and they're not on an equal playing field. So it's like they waste their time, they try really hard, and they never succeed. And a lot of people still look at hidden disabilities as if the extra time gives that person some extra advantage over someone else, rather than just making it an even playing field. So it came up again this week that kids who are in Governor's Cup, they are allowed to go and participate in these competitions that they have, but they're not allowed to get their extended time. And when I went up to one of the coaches and asked her to email whomever was in charge, the response we got back was, this is not the same as school, and we're not doing it because it's not fair to the other kids if some other kids are given extra time. So it really bothers me, because I think that it's really a lack of insight into what these disabilities are. And there's a whole group there are thousands of kids with 504s, and they are all not getting access to some of these competitions because they have these hidden disabilities. So I would like to advocate, as a part of the Gifted Talented Subcommittee, a part of the, Equal Student Opportunities Group, who do I go to? How do we appeal this? Because this is going on now, and if it's just a matter of opening someone's eyes, they can, it's the season right now. There are a bunch of kids that this affects. And
So I will explore the Governor's Cup competition and who manages that. Academic Challenge is a partnership.
They agreed.
Yeah,
So last year, I brought that up, and they were very, they understood the argument,
Yeah,
and they
that's done
said,
from my office. I can at least.
you did that. So they reversed that decision, and there were kids who, the parents like, thank you so much, now my kid can go and feel that they have, that they have a chance and they can participate.
So we're revamping Academic Challenge because it's owned by the Urban League in partnership with us. And the original concept came to address historically performing and underserved student populations. So we've reverted back to the Title I qualification to allow kids in those schools to have a better chance to compete in what we would call level playing field. I'll also bring the conversation back, though, because reasonable accommodations during the competition for some of those unknown disabilities have to be factored in, so that we're not being unintentional about being inclusive and intentional about addressing those. So I'll make sure that's top of mind, because we can at least control that and make it something that's not noticeable, but included.
That's the one that's through your office in partnership with the Urban League is the One Community, One Voice.
Yes, that's the Academic Challenge, yes.
The other one is the
Governor's Cup.
Yeah,
So
and
who,
And I'll look into that tomorrow.
okay,
Yep,
so can I email
Yep,
you?
I'll find out tomorrow.
Thanks.
I don't know right off the top of my head, yeah. So great points.
Feel bad for those kids.
You're right.
All right. Anyone else? Anything? All right. Okay. Seeing none, next steps would be, again, if you, let me see, school is out on the 20th.
Last day is the 20th.
Last day is the 20th. Our next scheduled meeting is, what, the 7th of January? So if you have an opportunity to engage in any capacity that you see fit, please do so, and then be prepared to, again, present on your
Last day to drop
subcommittee.
any cards, gifts, anything off to Sweet 100s, which is where I'm at, is December 20th as well, so.
Even though you're gonna be working beyond that.
Strike that out the minutes. All right. All right. But thanks you all. And seeing no other questions or anything, I'll call for adjournment.
Moved.
Thank you all.
All right.
Appreciate your work this year.
Thank you. We're adjourned.
You.